everybody, this is Doug Fine from Define Performance Solutions here in Augusta, Georgia. And I'm joined today by Steve Dailey, who makes his home and his headquarters are in Boise, Idaho. Hi, Steve.
How you doing, Doug? Great to be here.
Great to see you. You're looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. And you?
Yeah, we're going to have a good chat today. Steve is in the business of helping leaders, and I'm going to run over a quick bio of his, and you'll see that I wanted to prep Steve today by drinking like 3 cans of Red Bull, because talking to a guy like you, it's like, your accomplishments and the life you've led. It's like, I need some Red Bull just to keep up with you. But I'm on my own. I'm drinking water. So there's a lot of good things to say. So let me get started with a short introduction of you. Okay, Steve?
Sure.
Steve Dailey, known as Coach Steve, is the founder and head coach at Achievement Bridge, again, headquartered in Boise, Idaho. He is a specialist in coaching entrepreneurs later in life. I'll get into that in a bit, but that's where his sweet spot is these days. He's challenged himself in many different ways. He grew up in Colorado, and in Colorado, he learned to love nature. He learned to love the great outdoors, and he put that to work in his life. He went to Colorado State University, where he studied exercise and training, exercise science, by the way. And once he graduated, he started teaching. He was a professional swimming coach for young people that were premier athletes wherever. And he moved around a little bit: Colorado, Oklahoma, Illinois, South Carolina, and Texas. So you got a little closer to me when you're in South Carolina.
That's right. I love that part of the country. Yeah.
So for over 40 years, Steve has had the privilege of working with all kinds of high achievers. So he's a high achiever himself, and you'll hear a little bit more why I would say that and the evidence for that. But he likes to help people get better at what they do. And he focused on individuals with their athletic prowess, and you've turned that into helping individuals with their business prowess and their personal habits, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So I'm only going to pick a few of these, Steve. These are a few of Steve's accomplishments, and you won't believe it. This is the Red Bull thing, okay? Steve did a bicycle trek from Colorado to Canada over 2,300 miles, and he did that because he made a beer bet. So did you win the bet, Steve?
I won the bet, but
yeah, I would say so.
The bad news is they didn't pay. It was
didn't pay.
Yeah, it was a case of beer, and they didn't pay. So anyway, that's all right.
Who's the fool there, Steve? You should have got that somehow. Okay. Here's another thing that he did. He did a 12-hour continuous swim to raise money for Make-A-Wish. Okay, 12-hour swim. Now, by the end, were you just doing the breaststroke? Did you have a floaty or anything like that?
No, nothing.
Wow, 12 hours. Okay, so this is Steve Dailey. This is the real thing. An international canoe race across the country of Belize, and he did 175 miles in 4 days. Yep. So a canoe race, people. So he's not just canoeing down the Amazon or wherever it was, but he's racing others for 4 days. One more, maybe 2 more. And this is his climbing prowess. He hiked and climbed to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And he did that to raise money for clean water around the world. So that's amazing. And then successful ascent and descent of Pikes Peak in 1 day.
Yep.
So grab your Red Bulls, people, because this guy is amazing, and we're going to have an amazing talk today. So again, thank you for coming, Steve. I want to share with you Steve's really his motto and where he finds himself these days in the coaching space. He helps people achieve their lifetime best income and enjoy a kick-ass life at the same time. Now that's provocative. I love it, and we'll figure out what a kick-ass life is in a minute. But why don't you just tell me about a little bit about your journey from coaching athletes to coaching other types of people, and then moving into business coaching.
Yeah, great, Doug. Great place to start. So to give you the short summary, the swim coaching business, it was phenomenally gratifying. However, I just couldn't see after investing about a decade that I was ever going to make a lot of money.
Right.
I happened to be in Houston, Texas at the time when there was an amazing real estate explosion going on. And I saw a lot of master plan communities building up at the time, promoting this amazing lifestyle with all of them having recreation centers, swimming pools, tennis courts, clubhouses, soccer fields, baseball diamond, all that. And you see these pictures on the billboards of the kids, having a great time and families out. And then you drive by these facilities and it was crickets. Nothing was going on.
Oh, no one was hanging out there.
Nobody was hanging out. And so what I thought was, hey, I know how to pull a bunch of kids together to have fun. And, I had a bunch of ideas for that. So I started marketing myself as a person that could bring people to the billboard picture.
Wow.
And basically, the deal was, I'll take care of your facility if you let me keep the money in the programs. Mm-hmm. And built a business very fast. Started with one facility that under contract that very first summer. And by the third summer, I had 100 facilities under contract in Houston, Texas, and a multi-million-dollar business. It was I had 300 people working for me, fleet of trucks. I mean, it was incredible. And so I started getting asked when I go to networking events, gosh, I'm seeing you everywhere. The name of your business, you're doing a great thing in the community. It's amazing. I wonder if you'd let me ask you a few questions. And so one day, a guy that owns a shoe store, athletic shoe store, said, listen, why don't you come over to my shop? Let's just talk about how you've created such huge community awareness. So we spent a couple hours talking. It was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. At the end of the conversation, I gave him some ideas. And at the end of the conversation, he said, hey, so what do I owe you? And he pulled his checkbook out. And I said, oh, Andy, I didn't plan on getting paid. This is just fun, great conversation. I hope I could help you. He said, no, I insist. He signed the check and he said, how much did I make it out for? I said, listen, that's up to you, So he wrote a check for $1,000.
Yeah.
Now, this is way, way before the internet.
Did you make like $1,000 for 20 minutes of discussion, something like that?
Yeah, right, exactly. It was
bad.
Like, it was great return, no overhead. I was thinking, God, this is great. So I went back to my office and I called my printer and said, listen, I want you to make me a new business card, Steve Dailey, business coach. That's just what came to mind. And it's way, way, way before business coaching was even a thing. Nobody was talking about it. I'm not saying I invented it, but that's just what came to mind. Yeah. And so that was over 30 years ago.
So you've been doing this. You've been helping entrepreneurs and businesses to get better. After you built that business in Houston.
Exactly. I end up selling that and then just moving right into the coaching thing. And it's been a wild, fun journey.
That's awesome. So right now, Steve, who would you say is your ideal client that you like to help?
Let me preface in saying that when you get to a certain point in life and career, you can do a lot of things. You have a lot of perspective, a lot of outlook. I know that certainly fits you. But I tell my clients all the time, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I've found it to be essential when I'm working with people, but also I try to eat my own dog food, as they say. And so I've narrowed my focus considerably over the last probably 10 years. And what I've landed on that really, really, sets my passion and competency on fire is working with what I call seasoned business owners. Those are people that have been around the block in life and have been around the block in business. And I don't have to teach them about the fundamentals so much.
Right.
How to apply the fundamentals to where they're aspiring next. And then what's also great about that demographic, if you will, is that there's a clock ticking. You know, they know that, gosh, I've invested a ton of my whole life into creating something, parlaying all my experience, my wisdom, my success, my failures. And there's still a lot of life I want to explore and appreciate. And so that urgency creates a perfect intersection for somebody like me to come along and say, okay, let me hear your ideas. Let me hear your plans. Let me hear your aspirations. And I want to help you remove all the obstacles, create a plan for achieving those things. And let's truly build an amazing business and a kick-ass life like you
love
like
it.
you
Love it.
earlier. Yeah.
You know, it seems to me that you have, well, business coaches, successful business coaches kind of have a leg up because you're starting with someone that wants help. And that's fascinating to me, you know, that a man or a woman comes to you and they want help. They think, they know that they need help. And so you can position what you do to assist them, and they have, in a certain sense, the humility to say, I want to make this better. And that's a key thing for someone you're coaching.
Oh,
So
it
you don't have to
is.
go out and find your people that need help. They come to you.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So that's a great observation, and you're right. It's a wonderful spot when somebody says, "Okay, I need some help." I just started a client yesterday, as a matter of fact, that is in exactly that spot. But I'm going to tell you, it's actually rare for somebody to actually admit that they need help.
Okay.
Usually what happens is life and or business has to whack them really hard upside the head before they finally surrender. I'll say especially guys.
Okay, I'm hearing you.
Just don't want to ask for help because it's interpreted as a weakness. What is becoming great about, sometimes I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with the industry that I'm in. You know, on the one hand, everybody from babysitters to attorneys say they're coaches these days. But,
absolutely.
But on the other hand, I think it's raised awareness that, hey, everybody that really is at the top of their game in life, whether it's sports or business or pretty much anything, has coaches and mentors and advisors. And so I think that's softening.
Mm-hmm.
But I've spent a life of raising awareness for the value of that, because people don't necessarily stand in line. But when they do come, you're right. They're humble, they're ready. And sometimes they've been humbled so much that, we got to kind of pull them out of the ditch a little bit first, but that's okay.
And I'm sure you're motivational that way. So is there a way to summarize if you could summarize the type of problems that people are looking for help from a guy like you? Do you have what are some of the things that you kind of help business people do to get better over and over? That's sort of a common theme that they come to you for.
Another good question. So I would say that I could answer there's a singular request that is always at the front, but then it evolves to something that's bigger, and I'll explain. So the one thing that almost everybody comes to me with is, I know I've got a business or a business idea, and I know it's got great potential, but I'm just not getting there. I say, I'm not making enough. The business isn't big enough, or the money generally comes down to money. It's not generating enough income. And in fact, it's not unusual for people to tell me that they haven't paid themselves, or they haven't paid themselves consistently. And so that's where it all starts.
Yeah.
But then what I'll say is, okay, so let's just pretend we could wave a magic wand. Your business was operating in its potential. You were making great money. so what? What would that would that have? You know, what's the
Oh,
motive there?
I think we're coming to the kick-ass life segment,
And
right?
that's exactly right. So there's like, you know, well, it's funny you should say that. And they start talking about one of four domains that I basically focus on: wealth, which I'll define in a second, each of these: health, connection, and influence. So in the area of wealth, it's not just how much money they're making, but how secure they feel in their future.
Yeah.
Whether or not they can give money away to things that they believe in or they feel passionate about. Whether they have money to go and do and travel and experience life, you know. So wealth is about is multidimensional, and so that is something that comes up when I ask that question. Health is a big one. Lots of times people that are in the second half of life have allowed their business to sort of hijack their attention to taking care of themselves. One of my three inarguable, indisputable laws for entrepreneur excellence is: if you don't take care of the goose, it'll stop laying golden eggs.
Beautiful.
And so we got to get back to, you know, they want to look better in the mirror. They want to have energy, you know, to spend time with their kids or grandkids, etc.
That's
Connection.
beautiful. You know, I just want a little interruption.
Yeah.
So you get to go all the way back to your training, you know, your school, and then your swimming coach, because you were actually you probably got very, very good at coaching others in their athletic ability, and you get to still do that for people in later life. And that's,
I tell them, I warn them, in fact, look, you're not going to spend, 6 months with me and not talk about what you're doing to,
wow,
sweat a little bit, you know.
it's in the package with you, right?
It's in the package. The next one is connection. That's about relationships. And so oftentimes business owners will bemoan that, gosh, I'm just not spending enough time with the person I fell in love with and married to, or, my kids are grown or growing and I want to spend more time with them. There's other people, there's the community, and, there's a lot of different relationships in life that they want to get to. And then finally, influence is about the whole idea of making a difference. Any ambitious person wants to feel like that they've been significant in their life, that they've made a difference to other people. And oftentimes all the busyness about building a business, trying to make money, taking care of, customers that aren't happy, and managing cash flow and all that stuff completely hijacks that whole aspiration to make a difference. And so we talk about all four of those things, those areas, when we work together, when I work with any client, and make sure that there's goals set for each of them so that they really and truly get to what we've been saying is a kick-ass life.
Yeah, you're very holistic, Steve, right? I mean,
yeah.
And if someone's gonna quote unquote buy your services, or buy your coaching, they need to know that it's a four-pronged thing, that you want people to optimize every aspect of their life.
Yeah, exactly. So the second of the three inarguable laws is if your business isn't supporting an amazing life, then you might as well get a job.
Wow.
And so I'm not saying jobs are bad, but anybody
I'm saying it.
Okay. Anybody that's like I said, a seasoned person in business, will say, God, if I could run my own gig, that's nirvana.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me one of the hardest cases that you ever had, and that's just probably a challenging client. And what were some of the things that they presented with? And then what are some of the things that you did to guide them out of the weeds where they were when they found you?
So we're going to spend about 3 hours here in the interview.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
All right. Here's one. Points. Yeah, here's one client that comes to mind immediately when you ask that. So we'll call him Don. That's not his real name. So he came to me with a great business idea, and it had gotten into the marketplace, but like I said, was just not going where he knew it or where he wanted it to be, and he was really frustrated with that. And so we started taking a closer look at the business structure and how he was funded and so forth. And so there's a few characteristics that I have to say, I'd leave meetings with him and just kind of go, well, I don't know. This guy has really got a lot of work to do. So one condition is that we'd figured out all the different people that had invested in his business, totaled up his promises for their investment ownership percentage. And we added it all up, and it was 100, and I think we ended up with it being 118% of his company was owned by somebody else.
Wow.
He just hadn't done the he hadn't done the math.
Right.
So he had a big obligation, big promises. He's great at selling, but hadn't really. So that was a big problem.
Yes.
Then what showed up immediately is that he had big aspirations, but implementation, execution, follow through was terrible. I felt like I was going to have to live with him to make sure he did something with what I was telling him. Right?
And that's one thing coaches can't do.
Can't do. I can't do it for you, pal. And you've got to, if you say you're going to, act on something, you got to get your butt moving. So that was a problem. And then he had a lot of habits, without going into a lot of detail. Just one of them was smoking. That was really a distraction when we would meet face to face on occasion. And he would have to interrupt our meeting because I'm totally not a smoker. He'd have to interrupt our meeting, maybe an hour meeting, 3 or 4 times to go light up. And so anyway, so what happened? Well, after some time, I said, look, I tell you what, and this actually it was the first time that I offered this, and it's turned into a standard part of the program that I offer for anybody that works with me for a full year. I said, listen, Don, we're gonna go on a little excursion. I'm going to call this, I didn't call it at the time, but I was in my mind thinking, I'm going to create a stark segue from the way he was doing life, basically, to something brand new, a new paradigm. So we went camping. I took him out into the woods. We went for 3 days. And I supplied all the stuff that he needed. He didn't have to think about any of that. I said, listen, all you got to do is keep up. But there's one rule, and that is you can't have a cigarette the whole time. And he said, okay, gosh, I've been camping since I was a kid. This is going to be awesome. Can't wait to hang out with you, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, very long story short, it turned out to be one of the most challenging things he had ever done in his life. Not just the not smoking part, but all, what I based it, where I took him and everything. And when I brought him back, he was very, very quiet. He basically, I don't know. I wasn't sure I was ever going to see him again.
I bet.
And I think it was probably 2 weeks later, he called me up and he said, Steve, I just got to tell you, you changed my life.
Wow.
He said, I haven't smoked since I got back. I finally get what you've been telling me about, taking action on stuff. And he said, that experience, as hard as it was, took me a week and a half to recover, but I got to tell you, I have new confidence in what I can accomplish now.
That's wonderful.
So that's one small example of what did they bring, what did I do?
Yeah.
and what happened. So
I was wondering if you went hunting on that trip for cold turkeys.
Very funny.
Yeah. So I'm in the leadership development, employee engagement space. So I want to spend a little time asking you about some of the leadership or ownership. Let's just say it's the people side of being a business owner.
Yeah.
What are some things that men and women have come to you with when they bring concerns about their people? And so I'm just going to leave it real general for you.
Okay. Well, one thing that's very common is anybody with the team. This is a kind of a two-part conundrum here for business owners and leaders. One thing that's very common is the owner's perspective is that the people need to be fixed in some way. They need to be. If they don't get it, their head's not in the game, they're not showing up, they're not engaged, they're sometimes I can count on them, sometimes I can't, that kind of stuff. So
right.
Coach, can you fix my people? And then the what's behind that is or maybe a kind of a second layer is they're just not committed. My people just aren't committed. And so my process usually is to gather my own information about where the people are and what they're thinking and their perspective about how things are working there in the business. And it always comes down to basically two things. First, I have to tell the business owner there is always, and you just can't fix this, there's always going to be what I call a vision gap. You're the owner, they're not, and that's not going to change. So why they come to work and why you come to work always has a gap. They come to work because they're making money for their families, or trying to hold a career, they're trying to develop themselves. The owner comes to work because he's trying to build a business. You can bring people along to understanding their role in building the business.
That's very important too.
Yeah. And if you tie that to what they show up to work for, then, you can close the vision gap, but not completely. So that's number one. Number two is, I have to somehow figure out, and this doesn't always go down, it doesn't always, it isn't always well received, but I have to come down eventually and say, look, I know you want me to fix your people, but really what we need to fix first, and maybe even only, is you. You have to change some of the ways that you look at your people, the way that you're giving them instructions and direction. You have to change the way you lead. You lead from the front, not from behind pushing. There's a whole paradigm shift in terms of how you need to show up in the business so that the people do what you want, right?
Yeah.
And so when a business owner kind of settles down and starts to look at those things, then it's pretty remarkable how fast we can make change in their business and their team.
Wow.
But
that's what I just heard, Steve, is that if a business owner is willing, to look at themselves, it makes a tremendous amount of difference when they get some insight into themselves about how they're going to move forward.
Very true.
And I really appreciate what you're saying about, the connection between what people believe about their people is going to influence how they treat them. And
absolutely.
That self-fulfilling prophecy thing, if you're a Theory X manager and you believe everybody's lazy, you're just going to treat them like lazy people.
And that's how they'll show up.
Yeah, that's how they'll show up. And they're just going to give you what they're going to give you what you think about them, which is fascinating science, actually, right?
Yeah.
So we got to kind of wrap up here, but I can't not talk to you until we cover a little bit about your mindset. Where's your mindset right now? How do you wake up in the morning as a business owner yourself, wanting to do better as a business owner, wanting to help other business owners? What gets you up in the morning, and what do you say to yourself, or what do you believe about yourself, and what do you believe about the universe even?
Wow, that's pretty heady, Doug, but a great question. So let me maybe break it down a little bit. This idea about influence, I talked about wealth, health, connection, and influence. Obviously, the wealth, health, and connection parts are are easy to really see where you need to work. The influence part takes it takes a little more mental, emotional heft, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like challenging yourself to see yourself as someone that can make a difference, that can have significance, that can be someone that people, you know, will remember long after you're gone. And so I think one of the things that gets me out of bed is challenging myself with new projects and new ideas for how I do that. And you know, you read some of it in my bio. I mean, you know, I've done that in small ways, you know, raising money for raising awareness for clean water and Make-A-Wish and those kinds of things.
Yeah, didn't you cycle 1,000,000 miles or something for Make-A-Wish?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it started out, by the way, not very sophisticated. You know, my motive was a beer bet, but
There you go.
anyway, I've been evolved. But so one of the things that gets me out of bed is to be thinking about what can I do next with new projects and new ideas for that. This past year, I put together what I'm really excited about, a program called the Entrepreneur Excellence Alliance, and basically it's a place where entrepreneurs striving for excellence can collaborate and share resources and push and sharpen each other. And so
that sounds
it's
awesome, Steve.
You know, it's things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another level, though, is has to do with age. Just to be candid, you know, I'm 65 and I stay very, very active. But you know, I couldn't jump on a bike today and painlessly pedal to Canada and back. You know,
Yes.
you know, when I was young and stupid, I mean, I you know, jumped on the bike, did that, came back, went to class. You know, I mean, it was no big deal.
Yeah.
But you know, these days, you know, it's a little bit more preparation, a little bit more recovery on the things that I do, and so I think what gets me out of bed is to, you know, kind of a combination of protecting and preserving so that I can live a long, vibrant, healthy life for the rest of my life.
Wonderful. You know what I heard loud and clear, that when you're helping people make influence, be influential in their lives, and that's what your clients get from you also. Right. I would just say you should be awfully proud that you help other people become influential in their sphere. And there's a multiplier effect to, you know, what people are doing in the world because they know you or they've hired you and you're their coach. So that's beautiful.
You nailed that. I mean, you know, somebody asked me the other day, so do you have to coach? Do you have to keep working, Steve? And I said, no, not really. You know, I like it. And,
yes.
And then he pressed in and I said, look, let me tell you, what I know I can do to help other people inspires me every day, and I can't stop. I mean,
that's awesome.
I just stop, you know.
That's awesome. Hey, the last question I'm going to ask you is, who do you read anybody or who would you say inspires you from, let's say, a book? And it could be any time in your life, or it could be what you're reading now, but I believe people like you have got to keep their their saw sharpened. So who do you like to read that influences you in any way?
Great question. I agree with you fully that, you know, the old cliche is leaders are readers, and so you know what, I pay attention to people that I regard as thought leaders in you know, some combination of business and life. So for example, one guy that really impresses me is an author named Daniel Pink.
Yeah.
And he has written a fascinating book, and I think exposure on how we have motivation completely wrong in our marketplace, our society. The book's called Drive. He also did a similar work with his latest book called Win, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically the power of timing. And I love books like that that offer current thinking on ageless problems.
Right.
Now, I also enjoy going back to some of the amazing works of people that we've all sort of, some of us anyway, have grown up with, learning from, Napoleon Hill, for example.
Think and Grow Rich,
Think
right?
and Grow Rich. And he actually wrote another book. What's the name of it? Something about the devil, challenging the devil or something. Anyway, it was a controversial book at the time. His family they had the work, the manuscript, but it wasn't published. And his family just released it, I think, about 10 years ago.
Oh.
And Defeating the Devil, maybe is the name of it. But anyway, it's but it's Napoleon Hill from another angle. But those kinds of works, going back to those really ageless, timeless wisdom guys, I love going back to those books too and rereading.
That's cool. Yeah. Especially when you're in a different phase of life.
Oh yeah,
you'll probably just see something completely different, but it's as applicable as it was back then, but in a different way.
Very, very profound.
So the last question: how should people get in touch with you, Steve? What if they wanted to talk to you more? I know you are at the Achievement Bridge, and you could give your website, but what would someone experience if they were to, and how would they get in touch with you?
Great. So achievementbridge.com
okay.
is a great start. If you want to actually really get to know how I think, get a sample of how I basically organize this, we'll call it transformation for people that I coach. I do a virtual workshop every week I call it a slingshot session, with the idea that I'm going to put you in a slingshot. It's about an hour. It's completely complimentary. And it's a small group virtual workshop, and where I basically go through my my framework, my strategy called the 7 triggers for 7 figures. And it's basically a formula that I've developed over several years. And I walk people through that, and I guarantee that they walk away with stuff they can use same day and next day. And it's pretty powerful. So if they go to slingshotsession.com, slingshotsession.com, they can read more about it and register. That's available on my homepage at achievementbridge.com as well. But if you just want to get right to the meat, and that's a nice way to get to really know me.
You might find my ugly mug at one of those meetings.
You know what? I'd love to have you. To have you, Doug.
Hey, the last question. Is there something that you wish I would have asked you about today? Because we got a few more minutes. Is there something that's like, I want to tell Doug's audience this?
You've done a great job of kind of hitting what I think are some of the most important aspects of who I am and what I'm about. Nothing comes to mind, Doug.
Okay.
I think you've hit it really well here.
Well, it was just a pleasure to talk to you, Steve, and I really do hope that this audience that's watching this today will really consider hard about getting in touch with you and seeing what you could do to help them, and especially that free slingshot sessions. Like that sounds nice. That sounds really cool. A cool way to get to know you and how you think and what you can do for them.
Yeah, would love it.
Great, Steve. Thank you, and enjoy the week in Boise. And I hope we can do this again as we get to know each other a little better.
Anytime, Doug. Feel free.
Thank you so much. You take care.
All right.